What if the movies that messed with your head decades ago still hold up today? The ones that blurred dreams with reality and made paranoia feel like truth, from cold corridors of corporate madness to suburban nightmares that cracked the human mind. Wide open, these films, from the 70s to 90s, predicted our obsession with illusion, identity, and control. Let's unravel 10 mind games that only got sharper with time. Number 10. The Parallax View, 1974. Back when paranoia was cinematic oxygen, the Parallax View was dismissed as too bleak, too confusing, too political. Yet time turned it into prophecy. Warren Beatty plays a reporter chasing the truth behind a mysterious corporation that recruits assassins through psychological testing. The deeper he digs, the more distorted the reality becomes. What begins as a political thriller transforms into a hall of mirrors where the audience questions every motive, every camera angle, every word spoken. The controversy was instant. Released just after Watergate, it was seen as too dangerous, too close to the nerve. Some networks refused to promote it, fearing public distrust. Critics were divided, calling it either visionary or reckless. Beatty's character's descent into manipulated madness was said to echo real CIA brainwashing experiments, and that rumor made studios nervous. Behind the scenes, director Alan J. Pakula reportedly pushed everyone to feel genuine disorientation, filming long takes in oppressive geometry that mirrored corporate surveillance. The editing room became its own labyrinth, cutting the story until it felt dreamlike and hopeless. When it resurfaced decades later, new audiences found truth where critics once saw confusion. Its imagery of false flags and media control aged into chilling realism. The film no longer feels fictional. It feels like documentary cinema disguised as paranoia. Today, the Parallax View stands as a mirror reflecting how manipulation became mainstream and how truth became performance. Number 9. Jacob's Ladder, 1990. When Jacob's Ladder arrived, audiences were not ready. They expected a simple war horror. What they got was a descent into psychological purgatory. Tim Robbins plays a Vietnam veteran haunted by hallucinations, where demons walk unseen through New York subways. The film fractures time itself, memories, dreams, and afterlife blending until you cannot tell which one is real. Upon release, it baffled and terrified critics. The Motion Picture Association nearly delayed its release over its relentless dread. Religious groups called it blasphemous. Some test audiences reportedly walked out in silence, shaken by its ambiguous ending. Yet that ending is what gave the film its immortality. Director Adrian Lyne built every frame on unease. He filmed with flickering lights and distorted camera speeds to simulate neurological terror. The special effects were done in camera. No digital tricks, only practical movements and contortions. That made the monsters feel human. The chaos behind the production mirrored the story itself. Script rewrites were constant. Actors were kept isolated between takes to amplify paranoia. Even the score by Maurice Jarre was mixed to sound unfinished, a sonic echo of trauma looping endlessly. For years, Jacob's Ladder drifted in cult limbo. But as modern psychology and PTSD studies evolved, the film was rediscovered as visionary. It foresaw the fractured soldier mind long before mainstream cinema dared to. Today it is regarded not as horror, but as existential truth, a film that traps viewers inside the trembling architecture of guilt. Number 8. The Game, 1997. David Fincher's The Game arrived like a riddle inside a trap, inside another riddle. Critics called it cold and mechanical. Yet the longer it lingered, the more it began to feel like prophecy. Michael Douglas plays a wealthy banker whose birthday gift from his brother is a mysterious real-life game run by a shadowy corporation. Soon, his life unravels as everything he knows turns into staged illusions and betrayals. Audiences at first struggled with its tone. Was it satire, thriller, or philosophy? The ending sparked furious debate. Some even believed the final fall scene was a dream or a double bluff. Fincher himself refused to clarify, adding to the myth. Production was chaotic. Fincher reportedly fought executives who wanted more explosions and fewer ideas. Douglas was forced to perform genuine free-fall stunts to maintain realism. The crew even filmed without explaining scenes to extras to preserve confusion. When it premiered, it performed modestly, but as technology advanced, so did its relevance. The idea of curated illusions controlling every detail of your life echoed the rise of digital surveillance and social engineering. Today, the game feels like a premonition of virtual reality addiction, where identity and control dissolve. Its legacy lies in discomfort. It made audiences question whether their own lives might already be part of someone else's design. What once felt implausible now feels eerily intimate. The game aged like fine paranoia, reminding us that the scariest illusions are the ones we never notice ending. Number 7. Donnie Darko, 2001. Though technically born at the dawn of a new millennium, Donnie Darko carries the spirit of the late 90s, the paranoia, the teenage isolation, and the creeping sense of unseen design. When it premiered, it confused nearly everyone. Was it science fiction or hallucination? Was the world ending? Or was Donnie simply losing his mind? Critics dismissed it as incoherent, but the underground audience saw brilliance buried beneath the chaos. Jake Gyllenhaal plays Donnie, a troubled teen haunted by a man in a nightmarish rabbit mask who tells him the world will end in 28 days. What unfolds is a story where time travel metaphysics and mental illness blur into each other until reality itself collapses. The film's release was cursed by timing. It arrived just weeks after the attacks of September 11, and its haunting image of a jet engine falling from the sky led many theaters to pull it. Studio executives nearly buried it entirely, fearing backlash. Behind the scenes, first-time director Richard Kelly faced near total loss of control. The production barely survived distribution wars, editing disputes, and financial collapse. But out of that chaos, something timeless emerged. Years later, when the director's cut was released, new audiences pieced together the riddles. The film grew into a cultural code passed like secret scripture across online forums and midnight screenings. Donnie Darko's vision of doomed youth wrapped in invisible cosmic machinery spoke to an entire generation's fear of predetermined lives. What was once called confusing now feels prophetic. The movie predicted our algorithmic age where fate feels pre-written by forces unseen. Donnie Darko aged perfectly because it understood one eternal truth: the scariest monsters were the face of destiny. Number 6. The Manchurian Candidate, 1962. Before mind control became pop culture paranoia, this film invented the playbook. The Manchurian Candidate was both political thriller and psychological horror disguised as espionage drama. When it premiered, it terrified audiences with its audacity. Frank Sinatra and Angela Lansbury delivered performances that bled realism into nightmare. The story of a soldier brainwashed into becoming an unwitting assassin by foreign forces was too close to the Cold War heart. The controversy was immediate. The film's depiction of government manipulation hit at a time when Americans were already drowning in fear of infiltration. Then, real-life tragedy struck. After the assassination of President Kennedy, the studio withdrew the film entirely. For decades, it remained locked away, whispered about more than seen. Behind the camera, director John Frankenheimer fought political pressure and censorship threats. Rumors spread that intelligence agencies wanted it gone. Even the editing team claimed strange visitors appeared on set requesting script changes. Whether myth or truth, the legend only deepened. When it returned to theaters years later, audiences finally saw what had been hidden. The film's icy realism and hypnotic montages predicted not only modern propaganda, but the entire culture of psychological warfare. Critics now call it a masterpiece that foresaw everything from media brainwashing to election manipulation. Its legacy survives because it did not exaggerate paranoia, it revealed it. The Manchurian Candidate aged perfectly by proving that fear itself can be manufactured, that loyalty can be programmed, and that truth can be the most dangerous weapon of all. Number 5. Videodrome, 1983. David Cronenberg's Videodrome was dismissed as grotesque art house chaos when it debuted. Today it feels like sacred prophecy. Starring James Woods as a sleazy television executive who discovers a mysterious broadcast that infects minds and reshapes reality, the film predicted the psychological horror of media addiction long before anyone had words for it. When audiences first saw it, they recoiled. Critics called it sickening. Censors demanded cuts. The imagery of organic technology merging with flesh was too disturbing, too visionary. Cronenberg faced outrage from both conservative boards and confused financiers. Behind the scenes, production was plagued by malfunctioning practical effects and financing trouble. Many of the gory transformations were achieved with handmade prosthetics operated like living organisms. Actors were told to react as if the set itself was alive. It was method acting for madness. At the box office it failed, but over time the culture caught up. When cable television exploded, and later when the internet arrived, viewers realized Cronenberg had seen it coming. The way Videodrome shows the screen as both addiction and infection predicted social media decades in advance. Now, critics hail it as one of the greatest meditations on technology and control ever filmed. Its tagline, "Long live." The new flesh became an eerie prophecy of how humans would merge with their machines. Videodrome aged perfectly because it knew the future would not destroy us with war, but with screens. Number 4. The Conversation, 1974. Francis Ford Coppola released The Conversation between the Godfather films, and it nearly disappeared under their shadow. Yet today, it stands as his most quietly terrifying work. Gene Hackman plays Harry Call, a surveillance expert who records conversations for a living, until one recording begins to unravel his sanity. The movie unfolds like a slow-motion nightmare about guilt, paranoia, and the illusion of privacy. At the time, critics admired its craftsmanship, but few grasped its warning. America was still digesting Watergate when The Conversation arrived, and audiences saw eerie parallels to real spying scandals. Some politicians even accused the film of exploiting the national mood. Coppola denied it, but the timing was too perfect to ignore. The idea of a man destroyed by his own technology felt prophetic. Production itself mirrored the film's anxiety. Coppola insisted on authentic sound recording, using long-range microphones and reel-to-reel tape just like Harry Call would. Hackman immersed himself so deeply in the lonely character that crew members said he would sit silently for hours between takes, refusing to speak. The film's minimalist score by David Shire used warped saxophone notes that sounded like static nightmares whispering through walls. The Conversation aged like fine dread. As digital surveillance grew, the film's imagery became hauntingly real. Today, its closing scene with Call tearing his apartment apart, searching for a bug, feels less like fiction and more like a tutorial for living in the data age. It endures because it speaks to a universal paranoia that every whisper could be recorded and every secret could be sold. Number 3. Memento, 2000. Christopher Nolan's breakout masterpiece reinvented narrative logic itself. When Memento premiered, many dismissed it as a clever gimmick told backward for shock value. But with time, it revealed deeper power. Guy Pearce plays Leonard, a man with short-term memory loss who hunts his wife's killer using Polaroids, tattoos, and handwritten notes. The story plays in reverse, forcing viewers to experience confusion, as Leonard does. At release, it polarized critics. Some called it disorienting, others brilliant. Distributors doubted audiences would follow such structure, but word of mouth turned it into a slow burn phenomenon. Film students dissected it frame by frame like sacred text. Behind the scenes, Nolan battled to maintain the nonlinear vision. Studio executives demanded flashbacks and voiceovers to explain the puzzle. Nolan refused. The final cut preserved the dizzying timeline exactly as he intended. Pearce reportedly shot scenes out of sequence with no idea where they fit in the story to preserve authentic bewilderment. The film's theme of fragmented truth grew more relevant each year. In an era of social media, half-memories, and rewritten realities, Memento feels timeless. It asks a question that echoes louder now than ever. How can you trust your truth when memory itself is the lie? Memento aged perfectly because it turned the act of watching into an act of remembering and forgetting at once. It became not just a mystery, but a mirror reflecting how fragile human certainty really is. Number 2. 12 Monkeys, 1995. Terry Gilliam's 12 Monkeys exploded onto the mid-90s as a fever dream of apocalypse and insanity. Bruce Willis plays a convict sent from the future to stop a virus that wipes out humanity. Yet the line between delusion and destiny collapses at every turn. The film was loud, chaotic, and brilliant, a time loop labyrinth that turned prophecy into madness. Upon release, it divided audiences. Some loved its bleak humor, others found it overwhelming. The marketing sold it as action sci-fi, but inside was a surreal meditation on fate, memory, and disease. The film's haunting asylum scenes made critics uneasy. They said it hit too close to society's growing fear of contamination and control. Gilliam clashed endlessly with studios. They wanted neat explanations. He wanted ambiguity. He shot with distorted lenses and claustrophobic angles, turning every face into a grotesque reflection of fear. Willis was forced to strip away his action hero, confidence, and collapse into vulnerability. Brad Pitt delivered one of his strangest performances, manic, brilliant, and unhinged, earning an Oscar nomination. When the millennium arrived, 12 Monkeys aged like a prophecy unheeded. Its imagery of pandemic collapse and misinformation became terrifyingly familiar decades later. What once seemed exaggerated now feels like realism. The film endures because it captures one eternal anxiety, the idea that knowing the future changes nothing. 12 Monkeys aged perfectly, not because it guessed right, but because it showed how humanity always chooses madness over understanding. Number 1. Fight Club, 1999. When Fight Club hit theaters, it detonated like an intellectual bomb. Critics called it irresponsible, violent, and nihilistic. Studio executives panicked as audiences misunderstood it, while devoted fans treated it like revelation. Yet decades later, it stands as the defining psychological labyrinth of its era. David Fincher's vision of disillusioned masculinity, consumer addiction, and fractured identity was so far ahead of its time that it took the world years to catch up. Edward Norton plays an unnamed office worker drowning in corporate emptiness. He meets Tyler Durden, a mysterious soap maker, who teaches him to reject society through underground fighting. But here's the twist. The rebellion is an illusion. Tyler is not real. He is the protagonist's splintered psyche, a manifestation of everything he wishes to be and everything that will destroy him. The controversy was volcanic. Some theaters banned it, fearing copycat violence. Feminist groups and moral watchdogs condemned its brutality. Even author Chuck Palahniuk admitted the reaction terrified him. But beneath the surface, Fincher was crafting a diagnosis, not a provocation. The film's real subject was identity collapse under capitalism, the hollow craving for authenticity in a world of mass production. Behind the scenes, chaos reigned. Studio executives nearly buried the project after disastrous test screenings. Fincher fought for the anarchic tone and refused to cut the infamous ending. The result was a film that audiences initially rejected and later deified. When Fight Club resurfaced on DVD, it found a new generation ready to decode its madness. Scholars saw it as postmodern scripture. Psychologists saw it as a metaphor for dissociation. Audiences saw themselves. Its message aged like steel. The more modern life blurred into consumer hypnosis, the clearer its warning became. Today, its final image buildings, collapsing to the sound of pixies, feels prophetic, not of destruction, but of rebirth. Fight Club aged perfectly because it revealed the mind's most dangerous truth. Sometimes freedom is just another illusion. So, what do all these films have in common? They dared to question the mind itself. They whispered that reality is fragile, that control is fiction, and that paranoia might just be clarity. Which of these twisted mirrors still haunts you today? Tell us below. Like, share, and subscribe for more journeys through cinema's most dangerous dreams.